CRM Evangelist is pleased to present our webinar titled CRM Perfect Fit. I'm Marcus Richardson, Vice President of Marketing at CRM Evangelist and host of today's webinar. The length of our presentation is from 20 to 30 minutes, depending upon the number of questions we get answered at the end. Let me introduce the presenters for the webinar. From CRM Evangelist, Nick Latsos, Vice President of Sales, as well as Raymond Howington, President and Founder. Both are experts in customer relationship management, providing solutions for CRM since 1991. At the end of our webinar, I will return and open it up for a question-and-answer session for a few minutes. Nick, you have the floor.
Thanks, Marcus, and thanks to all our participants today who chose to share their time with us. Our focus today is really all about having wild success with your CRM implementation, and that all starts with the right software selection. We're going to share with you today some information that will help guide you through your CRM journey. And with that, the first part of our presentation speaks to the promise of a good CRM. Now, the promise of a good CRM is focused on a few things, and we'll kind of add a few of these things together to make it easy so everyone understands the way the process works. Customer experience is making it easier for your customers to work with you. A 360-degree view of your customer is how you communicate with your customer. Various people in your organization to the customer or the end user, and access to critical data in each step of your process, anytime, anywhere. When we blend the three together, we get the customer coming into your organization, whether it's from a marketing, sales, or service perspective, the person or persons who are going to work with that customer having a full view of the information regarding that customer, and being able to access any information that's important in each step of the process that the customer is involved in. With that, we have two other bullet points, one that speaks to efficiency and the other one that talks about effectiveness. And simply put, efficiency and effectiveness are speed versus final outcome. So if we want to increase the efficiency of a particular process, we want to make it faster and better. So we understand the process, and then we automate that process to make it quicker. It could be as simple as how quickly can we get an information request fulfilled from a customer online. Or it could be how fast can we quote someone when they ask for a quote. Effectiveness, on the other hand, is the outcome. So how effective are we in our sales process? As we quote, how many of those quotes turn into orders? When we market or service, how quickly do the marketing leads turn into real customers? And when a customer actually calls or types in a request, how quickly can we close out that request to the customer's satisfaction? As far as the last bullet point, talks a little bit about performance metrics. This will help you make good organizational decisions and also help you understand how successful your CRM project and software selection is going to be in the long run. So as we think about metrics, we want to think about things like how many leads have we converted? How quickly do we close out calls? So you can pick the metrics as you decide what your process, which part of your process needs to be addressed, and then what's important to measure within that process. So we talked a little bit about the promise of CRM. Now we want to talk a little bit about your choices in the CRM space. You'll notice that this slide that we're looking at includes the Gartner Magic Quadrant for CRM. This is a 2013 version. You'll also notice that there's some players in here in the CRM space that you might recognize. Some of them include Salesforce.com, Microsoft CRM Online, NetSuite. This is an example of a third-party vendor that puts together a nice report every year on CRM and gives you an idea of who the top vendors are. In this case, we've defined them as niche players or visionaries or leaders and even challengers. Since there are many third-party products that you can buy and review, one of the things you might want to consider, and I'll suggest it's very important, is to take this type of information and make it your own. In other words, the most important part of understanding your choice is how your choice relates to your process. So you need to create your own matrix, your own grid, that's based on your business improvement strategies and requirements, so you can make the best possible choice. Now, as we think about choosing the right software, we want to try to avoid mistakes that are made in the process. Some of the most common mistakes we've listed based on our experience, and the first mistake that we want to talk about is probably one of the most important, and that is ascribing to the selling process as your buying process. I want to bring Ray Howington into the conversation right here so he can address this first bullet point from his experience. Ray, can you give us a little wisdom on this?
Happy to, Nick. So here's the thing. Most executives have the opportunity to embark on a CRM initiative maybe once or twice in their career. But for a CRM sales software executive, that's what they do day in and day out. So at the time that you engage with a CRM vendor, they're going to ask you, what is your buying process or buying decision? We've seen that most people kind of wing that. They explain the general decision-making process, but not a clearly articulated, planned-out process for how CRM can be most effective in their organization. That buying process is cross-functional. And so what I'm getting to is that for the lack of having a clearly thought-out CRM buying process, you will subscribe inevitably to the sales process, the sales executive, and not your buying agenda, but the selling agenda. And here's one example. Right? For most sales executives, their selling process ends at the point that they get a contract or receive a contract for software from your organization. And for you, this is most of the time, this is the point where your process is just beginning. You're going to have to take that vision and the strategy for CRM and try to figure out how to implement that into daily practice.
As far as missing metrics are concerned, the second bullet point is very important. We talked and alluded to it a couple of times already in this presentation. Very important to understand what or how you will actually know you're successful with CRM. So missing metrics really is key. We need to understand what areas we would be measuring for success, and whether that is in your process, thinking about getting to a faster close ratio with your deals on the sales side, or having a higher conversion rate from web to actual lead and then prospect, or even speeding up service ticket closeouts. Those are some of the metrics that you might want to consider, along with user adoption. How many users are actually using the system, and how many people are logging in, and how often. Those are just some of the things, and I'm sure as you understand your process and start pulling together ideas for what needs to be improved, there'll be even more specific items to your specific organization.
The methods and the techniques that an organization uses to market, sell, and service customers typically will change. For some organizations, it'll change at a different pace than others. But the point is that if you don't change your CRM strategy to align with your changing business, inevitably it will start to diverge and not be useful. And so this is where another common mistake is made, is that after people make the CRM decision, is to think that the implementation is a one-and-done type of process. You can fire and forget, and then 2-3 years later, it will still work for you. The one-and-done process is kind of tied to that metric, because after 2 or 3 years of using it, if you haven't continually improved the application and aligned it to your business, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to upgrade it. You're going to have to revitalize it. And ultimately, you're going to have to go to your SFO and ask for additional monies for that upgrade or for those services, and you'll be asked the question, how much are we spending on that? Well, you know that, but what have we got out of it? And if you haven't developed your metrics early on, it's really difficult to try to do that at the end of when you're asking for the money.
One thing that goes along with the idea of continuous improvement is how much improvement and how fast. We call this boiling the ocean. We want to make sure, just as everyone would realize, boiling an ocean would be really difficult. It's very difficult to implement a successful CRM program if you're including too many features and functions that aren't directly impacting the parts of your process you've already defined. So one of the things we want to suggest here is that as you understand your process and as you start rolling down the road to successful CRM implementation, and you're looking at the correct software for your situation, you want to focus in on a foundational approach to CRM. So we come up with the basics, we add the things that we absolutely need and are very necessary, and then we phase the rest of the project so that we can eventually get everything we want in a phased, sane, organized kind of way.
Of course, one of the premises of CRM is getting that unified view of the customer. We know that. And we know in order to get that, we must have cross-departmental cooperation. But yet we kind of see a lot of decisions that are made unilaterally or with a single department focused, and that's an issue, especially for when down the line you've got to get those other departments to use the application in order for you to accomplish your goals. Then that's when you have at least a little bit of resentment that their issues and requirements were not considered originally. It might be more of a challenge to try to get full adoption. So single department decision-making is an issue, and recommend that you bring in others and create that steering committee for that buying process. Kind of it brings up an interesting process as well in the decision-making as you're evaluating your choices on the CRM decision. If you've got multiple departments, and they're going to be involved in the process as well. And with multiple people, it makes it a little bit more difficult to try to get to that decision, especially if you have all those people talking with the vendors as well. How do you organize an efficient decision-making process for the organization without risking that your process is going to go sideways on you or lose control of that? And that's the issue that we get asked about, is how do we do that on one end of the spectrum. Some people think, well, we can create an RFP and limit that control, create strict guidelines for the vendor to only have conversations with one person. So that's one end of the extreme. But in reality, people have already had some conversations. We have ubiquitous access to the internet and back channels. And ultimately, that salesperson is highly trained at avoiding obstacles and circumventing certain processes and gatekeepers. So that's the other method, is not try to control it so much, but then how do you have a predictable, efficient process? And so what we would suggest is quite often an external facilitator can often help to formalize the needed structure without imposing strict controls and limitations on conversations, but yet just align everybody involved in the decision to the common goal, their roles, and to the project charter ultimately.
And as we start thinking about the last bullet point here, negotiation, we want to point out that negotiation actually begins with the first call. We look back at the first bullet point on this slide. We don't want to be in the vendor selling process. We want to create our own buying process. In order to have a proper negotiation, we need to have all of our information, our process, our requirements, everything defined before we make that first phone call. This is going to give us the power to negotiate for the best possible solution that's going to exactly meet our needs. Now, how do you get started? After thinking through all of the things that we talked about so far in the presentation, we talked a little bit about what the promise, what are the things that can happen if you implement a great CRM solution. What are the players in the marketplace, and what mistakes do people commonly make? We want to suggest to you the best way to get started After years and years of implementing different software packages in the CRM space, we came up with a 8-point plan. The first part of it is creating a project charter. A CRM project charter, we want to make sure we have an end game in mind. We want to formalize the project. We want to have a steering committee. We want to have the authority to make these changes. And then we also want to encapsulate our process and our requirements in an easy-to-understand document that we can share across the organization and get consensus. That goes along with the second bullet point here, or number 2, targeting sales, marketing, and service processes. We want to pick 3 areas, 1 area or 2 areas in each one of these categories that we can automate that gives us impact and helps our users and our customers right out of the gate. This way we'll get user adoption and higher customer satisfaction and high impact right away. We also want to determine our reporting needs, again, identifying the key metrics. What do we hope to get out of all this information that's going to be input? How do we make the best decisions? So what are the reporting needs? We also want to have a prioritized vendor selection criteria. We want to have a roadmap in mind. We want to give all the vendors an opportunity to answer these questions on how they would fit into our sales process and how they would benefit us and improve the process in the long run. We want to be able to create an RFP or an RFI that we can share with these vendors and get them ready to do demonstrations to us based on actual use cases that focus on our process as opposed to some arbitrary process out in space. We want to select the solution, and then we want to plan implementation and continuous improvement. I think once we understand these 8 points and start discussing them, you're probably sitting there in this meeting thinking, well, okay, here are some ways to get started. What can CRM evangelists do for us?
We've got we have a program. It's called Perfect Fit, and Marcus, you've got one more. Yeah, this is the right slide. Perfect Fit, and it's a practical improvement methodology. It's a step-by-step process for CRM planning and decision making, giving your organization a solid foundation for a best practices implementation. Right. So I'm going to equate this as an analogy to, if you can remember the first time that you may have purchased your first home, you might have used a real estate buyer's agent. And that buyer's agent guided you to the neighborhoods you should be looking at, tried to help you determine your own needs. You might not have known what your needs were, what kind of budget you should be considering for those needs, or do you need to revise or reprioritize some of your needs. That buyer's agent shepherded your process and helped you to make that decision efficiently, quickly, but while avoiding critical mistakes for such a big decision. And so that's kind of the role of the Perfect Fit program, is to represent your needs, making sure you make the best decision possible, and then you're set up for success. We've got different versions of this program, but no matter what program that you choose, we have a pledge to you. And you can read this here, but in essence, what we do is we represent you. We help you make your decision. It's not, we don't make the decision. We help you and support your process, helping you understand the questions that maybe you should be asking or getting answers to.
All right. So at this stage of the webinar, we're going to open it up for questions for any and all webinar participants. Feel free to use the webinar chat box and type in your question now. I think we already have a question that was typed in earlier. Let's go ahead and go with that one. Is it better to quickly make a choice or to take the time and effort to find the very best CRM?
I'll take that one, Marcus. The quickly and time is relative, especially depending on the type of organization you are. But I'll suggest that you don't want to make an impulse decision based on something that you're going to have to live with on a daily basis for at least the next 3 years. And I think most will agree that taking a year to make the decision is far too long. But I'll say with the process that we've laid out, it enables an efficient decision-making process and getting to your critical requirements and laying the foundation. For a small organization, it's a matter of potentially a few weeks, and for a larger organization, usually the time frame that most people would find comfortable would be a couple of months.
Appreciate that, Raymond. That's very helpful to the rest of us. Next question is, are low-end CRM additions effective enough for a small sales team, or do you suggest paying for the high-end additions that have all the bells and whistles?
I'll take that, Marcus. Very simple approach to this. If everyone remembers, we talked a lot about requirements and defining your business processes. I think the most important thing to do in this case is understanding the lower-end versions of all of the software packages that are available to you. What can they do out of the box to match your initial needs, and what does the roadmap for the future look like? So how much can we implement of this product in its, let's say, base version? And then we have some other questions to ask. The other question might be, can we customize the system at the low end to meet our needs without having to go to the next subscription level? This is a very important question we help all of our customers with during the process. And this is important because you realize that we're going to be paying a subscription as a company into infinity. That subscription would be great if it was lower and it was stable, and we were able to do everything we wanted for that low cost and spend our money more on continuous improvement as opposed to the base software. So really, in summary, the best thing to do is have your requirements ready, understand what needs to happen in phases, and then pick the software that's going to best fit those needs at the right price point, and then understand your roadmap so you understand the costs and the benefits moving forward.
Excellent, Nick. We really appreciate that full answer. And as we come now to the close of our webinar, and as a special offer to those attending, CRM Evangelist will provide, at no cost to you, an entry-level program that includes many of the essential steps earlier outlined in this webinar. Feel free to contact us to have a conversation to learn how other organizations we have worked with have laid the foundation for best practices CRM implementation. Of course, if you wish to take us up on this great offer, please use the phone number listed, the email, or go to our website and fill out the contact us. We thank you for attending our webinar and hope you are able to learn more about how to select and buy the best CRM for your company, making it a perfect fit for your needs. Have a great day, and we'll see you at our next webinar.